Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London, and I'm looking this afternoon at a very special book which has come to us from Croner. Now, Croner will be known to many people for their employment law books, certainly books I've used in the past in my practice at the bar. They are part of the Wolters Kluwer group, and this is a Wolters Kluwer business publication, and it's on the law of health and safety at work, and it's for these are annual editions that are published, and it's the edition for 2014 to 15. It's the 23rd edition of this work. We'll have a look at it in a minute. It's a paperback. It's been edited and written this year by Rachel Moore, and it's a comprehensive book on health and safety, preeminent, we say, in its summary of the complexities of the current law. And that's what Elizabeth, my wife, and I have given it as a title. You can see the front of the book there, then the spine, then that back. There's not much. It's not a heavy book. It's a nice light book. Runs to about 600 pages, just over. There's a detailed index at the back. You've got a list of EU directives. A must, of course, in health and safety. New approach to technical directives. You've got publications. This is all at the back, appendices effectively. You've then got, that's Appendix B, the publications. Then Appendix A again is useful addresses. So you've got a lot of information. It's very much a hands-on book. I was very impressed with this book. You've got paragraph numbering, so you can find things very, very easily. They link in quite nicely with the way in which the index is set out. You can see how it is, so you can find things pretty quickly. If I go to the front, the original text was written by Norman Selwyn, and I just want to mention him first. That's the front of the book. And then you've got a foreword, which is always worth reading to get up to date, because this is an annual publication and is welcomed, of course, by a lot of people. The foreword is written by Teresa Budworth, who is Chief Executive of the board, National Examining Board for Occupational Safety and Health. There we go. Then there's a preface, which again is an important preface from Rachel. Then you've got the contents itself, and then they run through the various chapters. You can see that some chapters there, some more running through. Then you get to the final chapter, chapter 14. That's the European Union law bit of it. Then you've got the appendices there with a list. The directives are right at the end in Appendix C. Table of statutes. Then you've got regulations, of course. So as I say, very much a hands-on book. Then there's a bit of case law, which again I think is extremely helpful for everyone concerned. Then we get into the main substance, law and legal institutions, the background of where we are today. Now, most of us will be well aware, by the way, there are no footnotes as such. You'll be pleased and relieved to hear. Most people will be well aware of the diverging views on health and safety. On the one hand, you've got people, they all recognise we've got to have something. But the problem is some people think it's gone far too far. This book, I think, gives you, whether you're a business, a small business, a bigger business, a trade union rep, someone involved in employee-employer matters, whether it's labour law, whatever type of law it might be, breach of contract, whatever it might be, but anyone in the workplace, I think this book is very important, because this book is a statement of the law as it really is. And it's readable, and I think that's helpful, because frankly when you go to the loose leaf works, they are too complex, and I think Croner have recognised that and tried to come up with something which is, I think, user friendly, and this one is. Now, this is what we say about the book. It's been recently published by Wolters Kluwer, by Rachel Moore as the new editor. She's been editing it for a bit. It's on an annual basis, and the next one, I think they come out round about the autumn of each year. I'm recording this in the spring of 2015, so this is the current book up until the late summer or autumn of this year. The book does make you realise that, helpful as the current diverse body of health and safety legislation is, further reform is needed in a number of areas, and that's where the political row is. And that's where the knocking copy by certain journalists on a regular basis, no names, Richard Littlejohn and a few others, need to be mentioned. However, further reform is needed, and I think that is really where the starting point is, because if we want reform, we've got to know what the book is all about. Take the matter of workplace bullying, and this is only one example. You'd think, well, what's that got to do with health and safety? Well, it's got a lot to do with it, actually, and we're going to find out. As this excellent statement on health and safety law reminds us, there's no legal concept at the moment of bullying per se, of itself. An employer, it adds, may be vicariously liable for acts of harassment, which in some respects is similar to the idea of bullying. Remember, there is a criminal concept of harassment now, which is entering the statute book, but I'm talking about the civil jurisdiction here. There is indeed the Protection from Harassment Act, again I'm going to mention that, 1997, which defines the way in which the tort itself may be established, because that's effectively what it is. If you think about it, it's a trespass to the person. It could be an offence against the person in terms of the criminal jurisdiction, but in the civil law it is clearly, or can clearly possibly be seen to be a trespass to the person, because it's the sort of the element of bullying and how far it actually goes. There's obviously the psychological aspect, which is another area. Again, the criminal justice process is having a lot of trouble trying to work out what to do with that, because a lot of our offences against the person go back to the 1861 Act, and that's in urgent need of review, as the criminal law reminds me almost every month. All of this then, in the book itself here on the civil side, may remind readers of the recent case of the high-powered media personality sacked from the BBC for punching a fellow employee. Current legislation would appear to support the stance that was taken, certainly by the BBC, and I think, again, you can see the arguments, whatever one's views. Issues like these and hundreds of others covered under health and safety law are discussed in the book, and I think that is where the big benefit is for anyone who needs to know. If you are the health and safety rep in a company or a trade union person involved in it, that is something you would need to know about. Writing in the foreword then, Teresa Budworth, that's Chief Executive National Examination Board person in occupational safety and health, calls it one of the few books in this field which is immediately understandable to those new to the subject and is very readable. And Budworth is also careful to point out that businesses and organisations that manage health and safety well are likely to be more efficient and financially healthier. Absolutely right. And that's one of the reasons why you must have a proper set of policies in place. But that's where the difficulty is, because some of it has gone completely over the top in the view of some people. I hope this book will give some advice to redress the balance a bit, but I do understand and share the concerns of some people without going into detail. And of course, Budworth goes on to say this is one of the most comprehensive books of its kind on the subject, and that is exactly the case. And of course, for examination purposes, if you are having to sit exams in this area of whatever type of employment you have, I think the book again is extremely helpful. By way of expert commentary and close yet succinct analysis, the book deals with the general law on health and safety, referring throughout to related areas such as employment and discrimination and other factors that can affect the practical management of workplace safety, which in essence is an important aspect of risk management. And we're all involved in that. Whether we would like to say we aren't or not is irrelevant. We all have that responsibility. And it gets down to the neighbour principle. It can get down to anything you want. But at the end of the day, there is the risk management element. It's the classic example of a health and safety questionnaire being produced. If you're taking children, young adults, on the underground, you've got all sorts of things that you have to think about, and therefore you have the risk management as what's going to happen if something goes wrong. And that's why you've got to have a little bit of foresight, prescience, whatever you want to call it, to know what you're doing, and actually to cover your own back when you have responsibilities for others. A quick look at the contents of the book indicates the broad range of health and safety topics and areas which are clearly explained, including the relevant legislation and how it works, the management of health and safety, and compensation for injuries at work. There are specific chapters on substances and on construction work, as well as a chapter on particular and familiar health and safety issues, from employment of women and maternity rights to alcohol at work, agency and home workers, workplace stress, and of course much, much more. Quote, "For some, this will be a ready reference book," says the author. She's absolutely right. That's exactly what I thought it was. "For others, it should provide a starting point, and an indispensable starting point it is too. Lawyers, we think, will especially value the wealth of the references in the tables of statutes, of cases, and regulations and orders. Remember, some of it is at the front, some of it is at the back of the book. Lists of all the relevant UK and EU legislation, of course, is provided, and there's a useful glossary, which I've indicated as well, plus appendices, with the index covering about 80 pages at the back. So for anyone professionally involved in this complex and often perplexing area of health and safety at work, this book is an essential purchase, and the publication date for it is cited as at September 2014. So as I say, it is an annual book now. There's the front of it again. You can see all of the various points that are covered in the back. That will be in most of the main blurb to go with it. Then you've got, as I say, you've got the index. And you've got, again, I'm just going to repeat what we've got here. The index is a big index, it's a subject index. I'll just show you that. Then before that, you've then got the glossaries. The glossary is very helpful, again, because there are words which are used which may not be particularly familiar. Then you've got things like publications. There are lots of different publications depending on the areas that you're working in, from the office situation to things, for instance, like quarries. So you've got a very wide range of different areas covered. The International Labour Organization is mentioned in a little bit of detail. And if I go to the front again, it's as Rachel says, it's the 4th year that she has been updating Norman Selwyn's book. I think she's done an excellent job. She says whether you're a company secretary, employer, manager, trade union, safety officer, or whatever, lawyer, student, the book will be of great help, because frankly the regulations are daunting, and so I think what she's done is brought some clarity to what is a difficult area. She says, "I've tried to state the law in the book in accordance with the law as it stands in September 2014. You've got to be aware of changes. There are people who are very critical, of course, of the legislation, and there's a little bit of a justification for some parts of it. You do get some rather silly decisions that are actually can be made. But the book is excellent. I'm very grateful to Croner and Wolters Kluwer for producing it, and a thank you to Rachel Moore for producing what is a first-class book, and something which I think everybody should have at least knowledge of, in case it actually comes and impacts onto the work that they are doing at whatever type of place of employment, whether it's a construction site or an office or whatever it might be. Thank you to all concerned. It's a very good book. Bye-bye.